They say the games in Squid Game are fictional. But what if I told you they've already happened? Not on a neon-lit soundstage, but in cold basements, silent forests, and behind cameras watched by millions. This is not a story about fiction. These are 3 terrifying stories about real-life games. Games where the stakes were life and death, and nobody volunteered to play. During the chaos of World War II, deep in Soviet Russia, a secret experiment took place. One so disturbing it was buried under decades of denial, rumor, and shadow. 5 political prisoners were selected from a gulag and told they could earn their freedom. All they had to do was stay awake. 30 days. No sleep. They'd be placed inside a sealed chamber where a newly developed stimulant gas would be pumped in continuously. The Soviets believed the gas would unlock the brain's hidden potential, make humans super soldiers, resistant to fatigue, immune to fear. The room was sterile, white walls, cots, books, a 2-way mirror, and microphones recording everything. For the first 5 days, the subjects joked and laughed. They talked about their families, their plans for after the war. The gas kept them alert, buzzing with nervous energy. But by day 7, everything changed. They stopped talking. They sat motionless, staring at the walls. One man began pacing, muttering about insects beneath his skin. Another began tearing pages from books and sticking them to the mirror so the researchers couldn't see inside. By day 10, the screaming started. Not from fear, but rage. One subject screamed for 20 hours straight. Then he stopped. Not because he calmed down, but because his vocal cords had ruptured. On day 12, they found one man dead. Not from the gas, not from others. He'd torn open his abdomen with his bare hands. The remaining 4 were found mutilated, skin flayed, muscle tissue missing, as if they'd eaten parts of themselves. They had stuffed their own organs into the floor drain, while still alive. When the chamber was finally opened, the men begged to be put back inside. They screamed when the gas was shut off. One of the surviving prisoners looked a scientist in the eyes and whispered, "We no longer want to be freed. Sleep is death." That footage was never made public, but Polish investigators decades later discovered fragments of the documents, burned, redacted, erased. One file contained a drawing of the human brain, labeled simply, "Consciousness Unlimited, Phase 2. Whatever they became in that chamber, it wasn't human. They were the first players in a game no one should have started, and the gas may still exist. In 2010, a migrant named Diego was found stumbling into a Catholic mission outside San Fernando, Mexico. His feet were shredded, his shirt soaked in blood, and his eyes wide with the kind of fear that never leaves a man. He was one of the only known survivors of a practice whispered about by cartel insiders, La Casa Humana, the human hunt. According to Diego, he was on a bus with nearly 20 others, most of them migrants heading north. They were stopped by armed men claiming to be federal police. But it wasn't a checkpoint. It was an abduction. They were driven for hours into desert ranch land. No phone signal, no light, just dry wind and cactus fields. At nightfall, they were separated and released into the scrubland, one by one. They were told to run. No explanation, no destination, and no weapons. Then they heard the dogs, trucks, laughing. The men came after them with machetes, rifles, and hunting gear, like it was a game. Some were caught immediately. Others tried to hide. One woman begged them to kill her quickly. Instead, they tied her to a tree and left her screaming. for bait. Diego ran for 2 days, ate leaves, drank from muddy puddles. At one point, he saw a child's shoe, still warm. When he reached the church, he collapsed. Police tried to dismiss his story as hysteria, but the next year they found it. Mass graves, over 190 bodies, some with broken bones, dislocated jaws, and shredded muscle, but no bullet holes, no signs of mercy. It wasn't just murder, it was sport. Cartels filmed the hunts, shared them on burner phones, used them as tools of fear, and not one person was ever formally charged with organizing them. This wasn't a war. It wasn't about drugs. It was about power, control, and watching people break. A real game, with rules no one agreed to, and only one way out. In 1998, a Japanese comedian named Tomoaki Hamatsu auditioned for what he thought was a quirky endurance contest. He was told it would be filmed for a future broadcast. He wasn't told he would become a prisoner. He wasn't told Japan would be watching him 24 hours a day. They placed him in a tiny apartment. No clothes, no food, no clock, no contact with the outside world. He was told to survive only by entering magazine sweepstakes. If he won food, he could eat. If he won clothes,
Could wear them.
if he didn't, he would starve. For months, he sat naked on a cushion, shivering, writing postcard after postcard. He celebrated when he won a bag of rice. He cried when he ran out of toilet paper and had to use the cardboard tube. He lost weight rapidly. His hair grew long. He started talking to stuffed animals, laughing at shadows. Sometimes, he didn't speak at all. What he didn't know was that his isolation wasn't being recorded and archived. It was being broadcast live to the public. A nation of millions watched him suffer, cheered when he won ramen, laughed when he cried. Children made fun of him at school. Adults wore parody t-shirts. He had no idea. After 15 months, they finally told him the game was over. He had won. He was taken to a new apartment, where they stripped him naked again, and began filming a second season without warning. This time he screamed, he smashed furniture, he begged to be let go. He was. But years later he admitted he still sleeps with a light on. He sometimes wakes up unsure if the cameras are still watching. They called it entertainment. He called it psychological torture. All for ratings, all with consent he never truly gave. And the saddest part? He still thanks them for the opportunity. These weren't games, they were events, moments in time where people's bodies, minds, and souls were broken for profit, for power, or for someone else's amusement.